My name is Jacob Schoenberg. I'm the founder and CEO of GrantX, and today we have Dr. Beverly Browning, colloquially known as the godmother of the grant funding industry, here speaking with us today. And Dr. Beth, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jacob. Thank you for coming in, for making all of this happen. I really appreciate it. I feel special.
Well, you are very special. Um,
Thank you.
and for those that don't know, Dr. Bev has actually disrupted, redefined, and really just made the grant funding industry amazing for over 50 years now, helping secure over $750 million worth of grants for industries such as nonprofit, healthcare, government, and education as well. You've also trained over 1,000 grant writers globally, and you still train about 400 to 600 a month.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
I've
truly
been
amazing.
doing that since 2001 when the first edition of Grant Writing for Dummies came out. I got the offer to create curriculum and teach grant writing online.
Oh my gosh, and that's another big chunk on the resume too. Is you're actually the author of 48 publications in the grant funding world, including 7 editions of Grant Writing for Dummies. And for those that don't know, this is the go-to resource for anyone who's trying to secure grants.
Absolutely, and it gets better with every edition when I get feedback from my fan club as to what they'd like to see in there. So with every new edition, there's always new chapter titles, new content, and sometimes there's a new chapter.
Oh, cool. Well, we did have lunch before this, and I got to hear some of the stories that have built your amazing career and make you an incredible person. And I had the question of, what really got you into grant writing in the beginning, and also kind of what made you decide to start becoming an author and start publishing. And it sounds like they're kind of part of the same story.
They are part of the same story, and I have to take the years back to probably early 1970s. A bride of almost a decade, and sitting for my first position as vice president of a board of directors for a volunteer center in Flint, Michigan, part of the United Way. I thought I was on cloud nine to be selected as vice president. Knowing that there was nobody else on the board that looked like me, that shared my gender or my ethnicity, I knew that I had to be the best board member ever. I had to get my game up. It was the first board I'd ever sat on, so I really didn't know what the expectations were for a board member. I thought you just showed up, went to a meeting, read the agenda, voted yes or no, and when it was over, you came back the next month. That's so funny. Wow, was I wrong, Jacob? I went to one of the board meetings, and I thought I was doing really well. First one there, got there early. My executive director of the nonprofit volunteer center walked into the room with a handful of papers and a horrible look on her face. And I just said, Sybil, what happened? And she said, we are losing our suicide hotline contract because our $100,000 grant is running out and we don't have the money to replace it. And she said, that hotline is taking hundreds of calls per week and we're saving lives. I don't know how we're going to, be able to continue this. And I said, well, what can I do? And she said, get us a grant. Okay, I was in community college, not married for all that long, and everything that I knew in my life that was about a grant had to do with filling out a form and getting dollars to help you go to college based on your parents' income, even though I was no longer in their household. So I just said, I don't know anything about getting a grant to help us. I can only talk about grants to go to college. And she was furious, and I'll never forget. Her face came beet red, and she threw the papers down on the table. And I thought, uh-oh, this is not good. And she said, what are you doing taking up a seat on my board and you don't know how to bring money into this organization? I felt like 2 cents or less. And so the rest of the board members came in. They were all male, all from families of high means and wealth, streets named after their families in the community. And I said, we have a problem. we're losing our grant funds. We need a grant. I really don't know how to help. Do any of you know how we can find a grant to keep the suicide hotline continuing? And they all shook their heads and said no. And I said, well, do you know where to go to get a grant? No. Well, are you able to give money? I mean, can everybody pitch in and we kind of keep this going while we're looking for dollars and trying to figure this out? And they said, no, that's not really our wheelhouse, Bev. We're just here to vote on resolutions and to make sure the organization is financially stable. And I said, well, it sounds like this grant is going to tip our boat of finances. Sybil will find some money. She always does. Don't let this bother you. But I couldn't get it out of my mind, Jacob, at all. And I felt so insignificant, like small, like an ant.
Yeah.
So when the board meeting was over, I left, and I just couldn't get it in my mind how to help. I didn't know anything about grants, and I knew the public library must have something. So the next morning, I called in late to my job, which meant my paycheck was going to get docked when I was making minimum wage, so that was a problem to start with.
Yeah.
But I knew if I didn't figure it out, I wasn't going to be able to stay on the board, and that would be even worse, to have to resign for lack of knowledge. The librarian in the reference department, and I walked up and I said, I'm on the board at the volunteer center. We're losing our grant. I don't know anything about it. What books can I check out? And she said, we don't have any books on the shelf about grants. And I said, there must be something that tells me where to go, how to write one, how to get the money. And she said, no, we don't have any books on the shelf. I said, well, what am I supposed to do? I think I asked a question that I didn't expect an answer for. And she said, I have a 3-ring notebook with 3 pages in it. She said, they're pretty tattered and torn because other people come in and they ask for the same thing, and this is all we have. She said, but each page is about a foundation here in our community. And I was born and raised in Flint, Michigan, so it was about Flint, the community foundation, a foundation at our local big bank, and then there was another foundation, the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. And it resonated with me, but I didn't know why. And I just kept thinking, why does this seem familiar? Why do I know something? So being raised by my grandparents for the first 13 years, my grandfather was a certified and college-trained mechanical engineer. In other words, he repaired cars.
Yeah.
And, he's back from the old school days. And on Saturdays, he worked for a family that lived on a huge estate, and the estate was called Applewood. And it was called Applewood because the entire estate was full of apple trees. And he would take me with him, and I would sit on the back steps of this huge mansion and watch him work on the cars. And an elderly man, he probably wasn't really elderly, but to a young person in their early 20s, he was elderly to me at the time. He would always come out and go pick an apple and polish it off and give me one, and he would take one, and he would sit on the back steps and we would talk. I knew him as Uncle Charlie. I did not know Uncle Charlie was Charles Stewart Mott. I did not know that that home or mansion was the largest estate that we had in the community, and I had no idea of the wealth that was involved with the Mott family. So I went to work that afternoon, and when I got off, I called my grandmother and I said, Grandma, I have to figure out how to find money for the volunteer center, and I'm on the board and I don't know how to. But why does the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation seem like something that I've heard before? And she laughed. And she said, baby, the man you call Uncle Charlie and that you see every Saturday, he's Charles Stewart Mott. He's a millionaire, and he has a foundation, and they have that huge building in downtown Flint. And she said, and his son-in-law, Bill White, runs the foundation. She said, why don't you call Bill and tell him whose granddaughter you are and ask if you can come in and talk to him? And I said, that easy? Just like that? And she said, well, it's just a conversation. Maybe he can point you in the right direction. So I did. I called in sick another day at work, and I went to see Bill White. Very welcoming, friendly. I learned a lesson then. It's not so much about what you know, it's who you know. That's what opens the door at the top. That's what gets you into the CEO of the C-suite. And I just sort of buried that in the back of my mind, that if I hadn't have been there every Saturday and actually talked to Uncle Charlie, I never would have been able to open the door at the Mott Foundation. So Bill White was cordial. He gave me a booklet with all the printed out directions of what to write, what they expected, what they funded. And as I was speaking to him, I said, I'm only on the board. I'm only the vice president. Have you ever been asked by the Volunteer Center about a grant or any kind of funding support? And he said, no. And I said, do you know our executive director, Sybil Atwood? And he said, of course. He said, my wife and I attend her husband's church. He's the pastor there. And we play golf on Saturday. And on Friday night, we go back and forth to each other's houses and we have dinner. And I said, so you're friends with my executive director? And he said, absolutely.
The one who's yelling at you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, so she never told you that our grant was coming to an end and we were going to have this problem in the community with a rise in suicides? And he said, no. He said, I had no idea. She's never asked me for anything. The Volunteer Center's never applied for a grant from the Stewart Mott Foundation. And all of this is being recorded for playback later.
Yeah, of course.
So I actually wrote it. I did not have a computer or a typewriter. We were just too poor. And also we didn't have an oven that worked. I just mentioned that as a sidebar. We were really poor, in case anybody wants to know the definition of poor, newlyweds. Yeah. So I wrote it by hand on a legal pad, and I took it to a lady in the neighborhood who had a typewriter and typed it up for me. And I went through and edited it and took it back, and she retyped it, and she's charging me $1 a page all this time.
Oh, gosh.
So I'm losing money in my paycheck because I went to the library. I'm losing money in my paycheck because I went to the Mott Foundation during work time. And now I'm paying out money we don't have to somebody to retype and type this information. When I called our executive director and I said, I'm working on an application for the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, before I could finish the sentence, she started yelling at me. What do you know about grants? You didn't know anything 2 weeks ago. How do you suddenly know something today? Don't embarrass us as an organization. Leave those people alone. And I said, no, I've already met with Mr. White, and I'm writing the application, and I just need a cover letter and our financials in order to take this back. And she said, absolutely not. You're not submitting anything and embarrassing my organization. And at that point, anybody else probably would have torn those pages up and gone back to work and left the issue alone. I'm hard-headed. And I'm also a Scorpio. We shared that information. That makes me really hard-headed. So I decided to call the president, the secretary, and the treasurer and fill them in on everything that had happened and that we had a chance to get this grant. I was asking for $100,000 so we could keep it going for another year while we looked for other funding to help supplement it down the road. And I said, I can't get a letterhead stationery sheet. I can't get the finances. And I said, and I need somebody to sign off. If it's not her, I guess it needs to be our executive committee. They all agreed to go in, get the paper when she was not around, get the letterhead, talk to the accountant, get the finances, make a copy. They brought everything to me, and we all signed the cover letter. And I called Mr. White and I said, I'm ready to come back in. I need another appointment. And he said, come on down. So on the third day that I called into work, I went back and took these hand-typed papers and I gave it to him. And he said, this is so modest. You're only asking for $100,000. And he said, what about the year after that? And I said, well, we're just going to have to hustle and look for more funding. And I'll have to talk to the other two foundations in the community to see if they'll step up and help. And he said, let me think about this and make an appointment to come back in 6 weeks. And so I thought I was going to have to rewrite the entire application over again. It was not easy. I mean, remember, I wasn't a grant writer. I was a college student, a wife, a worker, and all of those things, but not a grant writer. I just answered the questions. That's all I did. And I told what I knew about the rate of suicide from reading the newspaper archives, because I had used to work at the newspaper in the library. So I went back and they let me go through the archives and pull and look for articles on microfiche and in our files on suicide rates in our community. So I was able to put all of that in there through my connections at the newspaper. And with that, I just didn't know what was going to happen. So I went back 6 weeks later. I met with Mr. White, and he said, I have a check for the volunteer center, and I want to give it to you to take to Sybil.
That is
And he
amazing.
handed it to me, and I looked at it, and I kept looking at it, and it wasn't $100,000. And that's why I kept looking at it. It was $300,000. He gave us $100,000 a year for 3 years to make the suicide hotline a regular program that didn't have to worry about funding for at least 3 years out. So I waited until the next month for our board meeting. I didn't take it right away. I locked it up and, guarded it with my life. And at the next board meeting, and I said, Sybil, I have something for you from the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. And I handed her the envelope, and she opened it up. And she said, where in the world, how in the world did you get this kind of money?
And the look on her face?
The look on her face was surprise, amazement, unbelief. And the other board members were all looking at me. And I said, I hope this helps the volunteer center. I officially submit my resignation as of tonight.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. And there's so much I want to pull apart from that. First of all, knowing your background, knowing your story, it amazes me that this level of initiative and resilience and just pushing forward to really drive change and to save important programs is something that you've been doing since the very beginning. And I applaud that.
It was never a plan.
Yeah.
You don't say, when I grow up, I want to be a grant writer. I wanted to be a teacher, early childhood education, K-12. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be an urban planner. I had so many minors that there were not enough credits to be a major in anything.
Oh my gosh. And the other piece of this too that I think is really interesting is, you know, y- I've certainly don't have the level of background that you do in the grant funding world, but I've spent a few years in kind of the current state of the industry and seeing the parts that have remained the same. Understanding that, the experience of someone coming into grant writing for the first time being we need money for something that's really important and realizing that there just isn't the support needed or the tools needed to make that an easy path as I believe it should be. And you really having to kind of go out there and forge your own path and figure it out. Also, and something that it shows how many times you've taught people how to raise funding, because even in that story, I can hear, relationships. It's about who you know and how that can be just a call away. And so hearing the parts that have remained the same, but then also the parts that have changed much by your hand. Now there were no books, and all of a sudden, a lot of them have Dr. Beverly Browning on them. And I think that that's something that, uh, frankly, I relate with in terms of, my goal. Because, we see the tools today that are available as something that, we could potentially add to and hopefully make a similar impact that you have. Well, maybe not similar, maybe like half the impact that you have if we're lucky.
I think GrantX is on the way to make a huge impact for grant writers, grant researchers, and grant managers. I've seen the system, I've seen how it works, I've seen the time that it saves, I've seen how easy it is. And the reason I said yes when you asked me if I would join your advisory board is because I saw the glimmer of a shining star that's just going to get brighter and brighter and brighter for everybody in our industry.
Thank you so much. That means the world coming from me, truly. Um, and yeah, I'm a little speechless actually after that. We've worked very hard, and so we're hoping that we can. Um, and I think I actually, just to kind of dial back for a second here, so that I don't tear up. Um, Charles Mott, right? Is that Mott's as in like Mott's apple juice?
I don't know if they have a part to do with that. I don't know if they ever commercialized it. There is a second foundation that Mrs. Mott founded called the Ruth Mott Fund, and they fund locally in the Flint area, predominantly the North End, which has been, it's going through regentrification. And a lot of people are being displaced. They've already been displaced. So I only know about those two. I'm not sure if they actually had a commercial adventure like Mott applesauce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or applesauce, yes.
Yeah.
I only asked out of curiosity and, to keep myself from choking up. But yeah, I also, I kind of mentioned the difference between, then and now, and then the things that have remained the same. I would love to hear your thoughts on that more directly as well. Like, what do you see that remains? Like I said, with partnerships and a sense of kind of being left with your hands empty when you're given the task and having to figure it out. But I'm sure that there's a lot that has changed over the years, some that's remained the same, and just kind of to hear your insight on the grant funding industry as a whole, as you've seen it in your career.
Then there was no one else to go and ask about what is grant writing, how do you get a grant, how do you identify funding, can it be done without having to meet with anybody, who do you have to know. There was no one. There was a small group of grant writers who were full-time employees for organizations and government agencies in the city of Flint. And we got together every month for a luncheon and to just talk about our stuff and what we did and who we worked for and what was going on. And I can remember I went to a meeting and I said, I got that money for the volunteer center, and I'm getting calls from other nonprofits here in the community wanting to know if I would help them. And I said, do you guys think there's a possibility that this could be like a service that charges a small fee so that I could moonlight and have a second job over my full-time job and school 4 nights a week in my spare time? And I'll never forget what they said. First they laughed, and I felt like a fool or humiliated. And then they said, if there was a way to actually make money doing this outside of our 9-to-5 jobs, do you think we would still be in our 9-to-5 jobs? Get yourself grounded. Get some common sense. This is nothing that you can make a living at or turn into a business. You have to work for somebody, and that's how you do it. And eventually, after 20, 30 years, you can retire, and you can have a nice retirement fund. How silly to think that somebody would actually pay you to be a grant writer outside of an employer. So I didn't go back to that group.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like you went out and proved them very, very wrong.
Not right away. I did get calls, and I only had a home phone. I didn't have a business, but I did have messages on my little old-fashioned answering machine. every day when I got home from work, getting ready to go back out to go to college, can you help us? We heard what you did for the volunteer center. Can you help us? And for 3 years, I wrote grants for other nonprofits in the community for free because that was my way of paying back, because I had a Pell Grant. That was government money that was funded through taxpayer dollars and allocations from Congress. I owed it to the community to give back and to not think about making money, regardless of our circumstances economically as a young couple.
Yeah.
So for 3 years, I never asked for a dollar. And then something happened. Thanksgiving was coming around, and I wanted to cook my first turkey for my husband, because remember, I think we mentioned during our lunch today, I don't cook.
Yeah.
I'm not a cook, never taught how to cook. I wanted to try, but there was a problem. Our oven was broken. It was broken when we bought the house, and when we got the estimate how to fix it or replace it, it was way beyond our means. So we just used a stovetop. That was it, not the oven. And so I got this call, and it was about a week before Thanksgiving, and the executive director said, "We heard what you did for the volunteer center. We have a grant application. It's due in a few weeks, and we want to know if you would help us write it." And I started crying. And I said, "I really would love to, but my oven is broken." I want to try to cook a turkey for my husband for the first time. The estimate to fix the oven is $200. We don't have it. Could you pay me $200 to write your application so I can get my oven fixed? And I'll be glad to do it. And this was when I finally got a hold of an old Smith Corona typewriter to type on, and had a lot of whiteout on my dining room table for all the mistakes to keep typing over that. Whoever I was talking to at the time started laughing, and they said, "You want to come pick up the check today?"
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's like, before I actually get the information and write the grant, because I didn't know anything about a business or how to get paid or what to do. And he said, "Come pick up the check. Get your oven fixed by all means, and I'll give you a packet with all the information while you're here." So that was the beginning of me charging a fee. And for three more years after that, I charged very small, lowball fees just to do things around our house, repair things.
Wow. That is such an amazing way to
So
be.
my first paid grant application was $200.
And it made so you could cook the turkey?
Yeah.
And how was it the first time?
Could have stayed in a little bit longer.
Gosh, that's amazing. And so now you help hundreds, I mean, you said 400 to 600 grant writers every month, so that they don't have to go through the same kind of trial and error and discovery process that you had to.
Exactly. I teach them everything: how to research, how to write, how to do follow-up, how to work as an employee, and how to work as a consultant.
And now when you're teaching them about, you learned how to play the game early on, right? When you teach them about, the kind of era of today, and you're saying, what are the common mistakes that you might make? What are the areas where people come close, but they miss by just this much? And then, what can they do to really understand the realm that they're playing in terms of, understanding how grants get dispersed, where to find funding, how to work with foundations?
I teach differently, Jacob. I'm not your traditional college, university, faculty person. I created the curriculum. I know it from the back, of my mind without even thinking about it. It's been updated many times to keep up with where we are now and where we keep moving every year. But the biggest piece of that I share with them, anybody can learn to write. Anyone can learn to write. It doesn't matter if you just have a high school diploma, a community college, a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate. If you can write, you can write. But the key to being successful in this industry and helping bring in dollars for nonprofits, units of government, and other types of organization. It has to be a gift that's inside of you, and I can bring it out. If you're only in this because you want to make thousands and millions of dollars over time and put your name out there and be known worldwide, it's not going to be successful.
That's incredible. And it's funny. You talk about bringing that gift out of you and being able to kind of bring that authenticity to an application. I talk with people every day about our platform, and one of the questions that I receive often is, AI, is it going to replace me? Or I don't think AI can do what I do. And every day I say, I agree. I don't think AI can do what you can do in terms of that gift, that authenticity, that special touch. Really what we're here to do is, like you did with finding yourself without, the books you needed or the direction to go in, and then went out and created that so that other people didn't have to. That's what we're trying to do with GrantX and make it so that, we're handling the busy work so you can focus on bringing that special something out and sharing that with the foundation or the agency that's funding it. And that's something that I think is really incredible from you. And one of the reasons why I reached out and asked for you to kind of join what we're doing at GrantX and why I was so excited to speak with you today is because I really, really idolize that.
Thank you. You know I don't do well with compliments, right?
Yeah, you told me not to compliment you, and
That's
I'm laying
right.
it on. I'm gonna keep doing it. But you've earned it. You absolutely have. And beyond your accolades, just in the time that I've known you, you have given us such useful guidance in understanding how to actually help solve the problems of the grant writers that you train every day and the grant writers that we, provide our solution to every day. And making sure, when I started this, it was not about just going out and building another tech company. It was an experience that I had, similar to yours, like, but again, certainly not as much of a hero story, where, there was a project that was going to really, really impact the lives of thousands of people, in Texas, actually. And it was great work. It had the green light from the executive team. We had a great team on it. We knew the funding was out there. But the resource intensity of the process for securing that funding was enough for our leadership team to say, it's not worth the time. And the project died. And I remember sitting here and thinking, this doesn't make sense. This is something that would be amazing for the world and would have helped the company as well. But just jumping through the hoops to try and get this money that we know is there for us was enough to kill the project as a whole, and this shouldn't happen again. And that's why I started GrantX. That's why everyone on the team is here. And what we work towards every day is making sure that doesn't happen anymore.
The hoops are still there, but there are tools that help you understand how to make your way through. And I believe AI is here to stay. It's only going to get stronger and better along the way. I talked to a student of mine about a week ago, and I was teaching a class, and I used an AI platform to show how research could be done and validated. And the student complained that AI was likely going to replace her job, so she didn't want to have anything to do with it. Not for research, not for writing assistance, none of the above. And she didn't want me to do any demonstrations in class of how to effectively use AI. So I had to think about that for a long time, because I look mild-mannered, but, I think I've said this already. I am a Scorpio, and I heat up fast. And so my first thought was, then get out of the class. But I decided to approach it differently. And I said, AI can be your co-pilot. You're the pilot. You're the one with the ideas. You know what your organization needs. You just have to put that information in to get back what you're looking for. And instead of spending 40 hours chasing wild trails every place trying to find that information, AI allows you to almost instantly get back what you're looking for. And I said, you don't understand this, but because of AI, I now have free time in my day, and I haven't had free time for over 50 years.
Got a lot of catching
Yeah,
up
and
to
it's,
do.
AI doesn't replicate my mind or my creativity or my feelings or emotions. AI gives me what I need now so that I'm not scouting around on multiple websites trying to figure out what's the answer, where's the demographic, how do I get this, is this citable, how old is this citation, is it credible, can I use it in a document? And I said, so AI makes our lives easier. And when you learn through my course on how to actually do the grant writing and to use AI ethically, then you'll understand it's not there to take away anything. It's there to make your load lighter. Wouldn't you like to not have lunch at your desk every day because you're frantically working on stuff related to grants? And I think I got through because she was a lot more civilized this week in class.
And she came back.
Yeah, she came back.
That's pretty great. That's amazing. Yeah, and I really couldn't agree more in terms of my outlook for the industry and how AI and the innovation that's happening in the space is going to impact grant writers and the grant funding system as a whole. It's funny, we focus really heavily on grant research. Something that I've experienced as in all of the grant consulting that I've done, and then when I was at that organization on that project, even just going through all of the different databases, all of the different newsletters, it is this lift just to answer the question of what's out there for me. And that's an area that we really, really try very hard to streamline, to make easy. And we've done a pretty good job.
You've done an amazing job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we actually recently ran some early tests ahead of our launch, and our grant-seeking agent, which is able to actually gather public information about the organization you're looking to secure funding for, and then plug that into our database of over 500,000 funding entities, and it can find the highest quality matches at the same level of excellence and accuracy as a specialized grant consultant. Meaning if somebody with 10 years of experience had been spending 2 to 3 weeks for every grant, just doing the grant research, right? That's the level of quality that we can achieve in 10 minutes. Meaning you don't have to worry anymore about, before I even get started writing, is this even the right fit? And I can't tell you how many consultants I've spoken to that were handed a grant by a client saying, I want you to apply to this. And you may be the best writer in the world, but if somebody's giving you a grant that they're not qualified for, your odds are going to be pretty low, and that doesn't make you look very good.
No, and it's a waste of time.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah. And so we're hoping that we launch on July 15th. That's something that we can really start helping.
So I have to share with you what percent of a grant writer's job actually involves research.
No, I actually don't know that number off the top of my head.
You think it's 15, 25?
I would say probably like 25, 30.
80% of everything we do related to grants involves research. Not just researching the potential funding and qualifying it as mission alignment with the grant applicant organization, but we also have to research for the statement of need. Where are we going to get those demographics? We can't just say we need or the ABC organization needs. I mean, that's not going to work. That falls flat pretty quick. So you have to have a lot of demographics. They have to be recent, not more than 5 years old, and they have to be relevant, and they have to stand out on the page. In addition to that, you also have to research best practice models nationally, because grantors or grant makers, funders, They no longer just want to hear what that little nonprofit wants to do because they've always done it. They just need more money to keep doing what they've always done. They want them to escalate or elevate their model of what they're doing on a best practice that's been nationally accepted, that's been funded at the federal level or by large major top 50 foundations, and it's become a norm for each area that a nonprofit operates in. So without that research, you have nothing but a shell of we need, we want, we have. And that's where the time is. Do you realize how much time is going to be saved with GrantX?
It's certainly excited about it. And hearing that is, to me, everybody that I speak to in this industry, it seems like they lead with their heart. And I think you're a perfect example. People are working tirelessly, doing the research and kind of breaking down barriers like you have throughout your career to try and make change. And, I don't know if I necessarily meet the qualifications for that, but I'm hoping that we can help.
You're already making change. You created a tool that takes everything else and minimizes it.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. And hopefully helps maximize the amount of funding you receive.
Absolutely. And more free time.
Yes, more free time would be amazing. I think I had about an hour between the airport and when we got lunch, and I stepped outside for a second. I was like, "Oh, what is this feeling? Oh, it's the sun." Granted, it's Phoenix and it's 107 degrees, but oh my gosh. Well, we've talked about GrantX and we've talked about, your background and what you've seen. But something that we spend a lot of time thinking about, and I would really love to hear your thoughts on this,
Okay.
is what are we going to see? Where are we headed? We're hoping to really help redefine the lift required in order to kind of help these causes get the support they need. But, just like anybody else, we can't see the future. And I think someone with your experience is probably best suited to give us an idea. And so I'd love to chat with you and get your thoughts, share my thoughts, and see what we can come up with.
Okay. So first, let me roll back a little bit in time. Typically, whenever any of us that are in the field of grant consulting get a call or email from a potential client that's a brand new 501c3, ink is still wet on the approval letter from the Internal Revenue Service, and they want a grant. Those of us who are experienced and kind of can read the writing between the lines on whatever we're hearing on that phone call or that video call, we shy away from taking those smaller grassroots nonprofits because we know how hard it's going to be to work with them. They either don't have a full board yet, or the board is family and friends, which that those seats all have to be vacant again so we can put the right people on the board to help them build the organization. But in the past, there's been very little that they could go after other than smaller community grants. They didn't know how to use 5 to 7 other tools that are out there that you have to kind of piece together information about what's available, where's a family foundation, what's a family foundation, how do I do this, how do I do that. It was very difficult for them, and we didn't take them on as clients because, one, they were clueless, didn't have anything together, didn't have a strategic plan or a mission statement or a vision. They just wanted to do good in the community. They didn't want to be bothered with all the extra work. And I've been told thousands of times, I'm not starting this because I want to run a business. I'm starting this because I want to help people, and I don't want to run it like a business. And I think that that's the wrong direction, because there is the business of raising funds. There is the business of identifying potential funders. There is the business of building relationships. Smaller nonprofits and grassroots organizations, They only build relationships with people they socialize with, know in their neighborhood, or work with. They're not likely to walk into a bank and ask for the trust officer to find out if there's any trust accounts that may have grant-making capabilities that they can submit a request and actually receive $2,500 or $5,000 in seed money to get started. They don't know that. At Grantex, and I'm saying it as we because I'm a part of you now, I'm on the advisory board. At Grantex, we're building a system so that those grassroots nonprofits, neighborhood associations, people with a vision who can't or figure out where to go or how to do it or what's available, we're giving them an option, an affordable option, to get their foot in the door and not be looked at as low-hanging fruit any longer.
Absolutely. I love that. And yes, please do say we, because we're really happy to have you.
Thank you.
And yeah, actually, it's kind of like a sneak peek. Um, in August, we will be launching a feature that actually helps you uncover and access contacts that would be useful for you to build those relationships with, and a couple of other features to kind of help facilitate that relationship building. So it's not just this kind of cloudy abyss of, I know there's someone out there I need to talk to. It's a lot more clear of a path.
I love that. And I do have a side story, or a side lesson. I won't call it a story. Most executive directors, when they are able to finally bring in a grant writer, whether it's contract or an employee, they load everything on the grant writer. You find the money, you reach out, build the relationships, you write the application, and if we're funded, you manage the grant award and do all the reporting as you continue to do all the other upfront stuff at the same time. We have a high level of burnout in the grant writing industry. People just leave and they'd rather go back to a 9-to-5 job. One, because of the hours it takes to research, the hours and days it takes to write, and then not knowing what their chances are. It's a long shot when they hit submit. They're building the relationship. It's the grant writer that's building the relationship, and that is a backwards view because grant writers come and go. We burn out fast, and we go to the next organization and we take those relationships with us, and the one we left, they don't know anybody, they don't have anybody to call, there's no familiarity. So I love that we're going to have information in there about key contact people and who to reach out to. And building the relationship is the responsibility of either the executive director, the development director, or the executive committee members of the governing board. Those are the bridges to bring in the dollars. The grant writer is the tool that uses our system to be able to connect with and look at what's out there and quickly use our AI co-pilot to make things happen. For once, grant writers who are fed up and ready to leave the industry will actually be able to take breaks, have a full lunch hour, and go home without carting a laptop and all the work from the day that didn't get done. This is a huge lift for us.
Yeah, and it's so exciting for me to hear you excited about this, because if there's anybody in the world that, I want to be hearing it from, it is you, the godmother of Grant Puckner.
Oh my goodness, I have a tear coming down.
And it's funny too, with you're kind of tapping the vein of client relationships too, and working with clients who are kind of, often bringing people in and saying, we don't know anything, figure it out. We don't have anything, get it together. And oftentimes they're the ones that really need to, kind of lead those efforts. And so it requires today a lot of hand holding, a lot of back and forth, and it can really make things kind of slow down, especially when you're being held to a deadline. And that's one of the kind of motivators and inspirations behind the workbench on our platform, is making sure, yes, we can use AI to make grant research much, much lighter, much easier, and take much less time. But we had the question of, how do we make it easier to deal with your clients, right? And that's what Workbench is all about. not just finding those contacts, but also secure file storage that your clients can just drop files right into and you can work from a single place. State-of-the-art project management tools and task management for working with your clients, kind of like managing them and saying, here's what you're responsible for, here's what I'm going to do, and we can see who's doing what when. So you can make sure you're staying on top of your work, and it's easy, and you can make sure they're staying on top of what they promise as well.
Do you know how much money I can save, nonprofits can save, other grant writers can save that are subscribing to multiple other systems to try to piecemeal together a working way to have a shared workspace with clients, with coworkers, with program managers, with everybody that needs to look to see what the grant writer's doing, feed the information in there. Just canceling all those other multiple piecemeal pieces. Clearly, they come to a lot more than our level of entry for having a subscription. I see this as a cost-saving event, not just time-saving, but cost-saving. And I also see it as mind-blowing. Finally, we have something developed by a leader, a CEO who's been there, who's done that, and didn't just think up of an idea overnight.
Oh, now I know what you're talking about with the compliments. But yeah, thank you, truly. And I realize also as I'm saying this that a lot of this I haven't gone into full detail with you yet regarding our upcoming features. So hopefully, I'm glad to hear these are good surprises. But yeah, we really worked very, very hard over the last several years. And I mean, I think in terms of really what is going to make this change, um, it's the work that the people on my team are doing to work together and understand and pass things from the folks who are on calls every day with grant consultants to the folks who are on calls with each other every day, figuring out how to build new technology in the AI space in order to actually solve problems in the grant funding space, which is an announcement we'll be making soon, actually, and I can't go further in depth on, unfortunately. But yeah, and the work of the people in the industry like yourself who have been alongside us the whole way, helping guide us through the problems that we need to be solving, seeing our early versions and saying, wow, this really sucks. You need to fix a lot of stuff, and giving us the opportunity to do better and be better. And so for me, all I really feel is gratitude. And I'm every day so grateful and so thankful to see all the people around what we're doing and around our mission, like yourself, that are helping kind of change this system and make it easier for the people who need funding to change the world, get that money.
As soon as you showed me the early versions of GrantX at the very beginning, I was in, without a doubt. And that's unusual for me because I am cautious. I don't jump into things. And I believe I told you when I was asked to be a founder to start a new community bank here in the Phoenix area, I hung up on the person that was calling me, the CEO, who is now our CEO of the bank. I hung up on him 5 times because I knew nothing about banking, finance, or anything else, and I felt like a duck out of water. And I didn't want to be embarrassed not knowing any bank technology or terms or how to do it. But fast forward 5 years later, and banking is firsthand. I mean, I know it. I know the terms. I know what they mean. I've had a ton of training. I served on the board. I started the bank's foundation. So to have something as a vision and to start it and to see it begin to grow and go public, when you made that reaching out to me, my first thought was, here we go again, and this time I am ready. I am in. I'm going to do it. Let's go.
Well, I'm so glad you didn't hang up on me 5 times, but I would have called 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I would have kept calling if I had to, because especially if I knew how incredible this would be having you on the team.
I'm having fun. I'm learning, and I have a lot of confidence in what we're doing.
That's so amazing to hear. Well, then
Yeah.
let's talk Turkey too.
Okay.
Where, people are worried. A lot of policy changes. Um, People are wondering what is going to disappear next, and the stuff that's disappeared, is it gone forever? And how do I continue to do my job in a landscape that is changing very quickly from a technology perspective, but also very quickly from a policy perspective? And, we all know the world right now is going crazy. So how do grant writers look at the current playing field and still play ball?
I see a lot of discouragement among my colleagues, and I see their posts on LinkedIn in trying to flip what they're doing and still keep their businesses, still employ their employees, because many of my colleagues have 30, 40 full-time employees, all doing grant research, grant writing, grant management, everything. They went sort of in a hunker down mode, trying to say, are we going to make it? Are we going to be able to keep the doors open? I look at things differently, and I'm going to use a word, discernment. Discernment is powerful if you understand when it's coming into your being, when it's coming into your mind. So discernment is looking ahead without knowing what's ahead and recreating who you are and what you do in order to be ready for the wave that's going to come in and hit your job, your business, and everything else. It means diversifying revenue streams, looking at where we are going to go to get money, because we've seen the cuts at the federal level, the agencies that don't even have grant announcements in grants.gov anymore, things like that. It's discouraging, obviously. But what's encouraging is that major foundations across this country have made pledges publicly to increase their grants and to go above their annual 5% IRS requirement, because everybody that is a foundation, including my own foundation, we are mandated by IRS regs to give away 5% of annual revenues, or we could lose our 501c3 nonprofit status. They're talking about 6%, 10%, and beyond. They're willing to dig in, step up, and begin to accept grant proposals and applications from those grant applicants that align with their mission. So if you're doing youth sports, you're not going to go to a healthcare grant-making foundation unless you have a curriculum that focuses on health and wellness as a part of the sports. It's thinking outside of the box. How can I make this work without having to create an entire tier of services that absorbs more expenses that we don't have to spend? So the discouragement should have been in the box, ready to seep out already, because we have a lot of changes going on. But with those changes, as an industry in the grants world, we have to change too. We have to look at things differently. We have to think outside the box. We have to begin to look at how can we help our employers and clients keep the doors open when we're not going to be getting those multi-year grant awards at the federal level. We look at the state, we look at the county, we look at the city. We also look at community foundations. We look at regional foundations. We look at national foundations that are willing to give across the borders. We look at the newcomers, who are the new foundations that are just getting up and going. And we look at family foundations more than ever, and we get to know those people by presenting their bios and what they like to do and what they are socially involved in to our executive director, to our board executive committee members, so that they are becoming schooled in how to have a conversation that isn't just about we need money, but talk about, I understand you're interested in the arts. I understand that you support the Boys and Girls Club or something like that. Starting a conversation, having a friendly, emotional level where you know so much about that person's background, you could probably write their bio. That's the key to the combination on the safe of grant making.
Ooh, that's good. Oh, that's very good.
Thank you.
Well, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, when we found out, it was shocking news to everybody. Um, my first thought was, okay, well then we have to make sure we have all the private foundations. And it was funny. In 2 hours, we went from panicking to saying, all right, we know what we need to do. People are going to need funding for these programs not to die, and they're going to need a way to find it. And private foundations are historically, as you're saying, like they're hard to tap, and you need to have that connection. They're hard to find in order to make that connection. And so we went out, we made sure we had everybody, and we made sure we were able to provide the insights on, each foundation that's out there in the US. And so that, we're kind of helping with the lift. We're not finishing the lift in terms of getting that connection and knowing how they operate and knowing everybody on a first name basis, right? But we certainly can help provide some insights, some analytics, and a little bit of, a view of kind of who they typically give funding to try and make that process easier.
Our AI copilot and the algorithms that you built in, they are opening a door to information for everybody that's in the grants world that wasn't fully opened in one place before. And that's the difference. It's time saving, it's brain relieving, it's stress relieving. So many grant writers can't even leave their office at the end of a traditional workday. They're there well into the night, burning the midnight oil. I can remember when I was that person burning the midnight oil early on, trying to start my business and build it up back in Flint, Michigan. And holidays, my husband and daughter would bring me a plate. I was working in the office, sleeping on a fold-out love seat, and hardly ever leaving. I even kept clothes in the office. And we had a building, so it's what you do to build a business. GrantX is making this so much easier. I mean, if I were starting in the grants industry today, I would not have this gray hair at 50.
Well, I may catch up with you quickly because we've only just recently opened our office in Portland, Maine, and I've certainly slept on the love seat a few times there, but it's part of doing it, right? Yeah, that's amazing. Well,
It's not going to be hard anymore. It's not going to be challenging. It's not going to be discouraging. It's not going to be, no, you don't fit our funding priority. We're going to have all that information in front of us, and it's going to all happen before our eyes.
yeah, and it's actually funny. I'm gonna do a little bit of something I said I wouldn't. I kind of hinted at a breakthrough that we've made recently in the world of AI technology. And, I guess maybe this is as good of a place to kind of start talking about it as any. You mentioned brain saving earlier and, trying to kind of reduce those headaches. Well, we are actually going to be announcing GrantX Brain, which has the little AI in the middle. And really what this is when we talk about, providing that one place to understand, right? That transparency into what's going on, understanding of all the data that's out there, right? What we have is, in order to kind of match you with the grants that are your best chances of winning, not just the ones that you're qualified for, but the ones that you really have a good head start on. We have to understand who you are first, and then we have to have this full data set, the full universe of funders and funding opportunities, so we can know what money's out there, who's it coming from, and what are they looking to do with that money, and are you a good fit, right? But that's two big data sets. What's in the middle? How do we make sure that matching takes place? And when I mentioned earlier that we were creating new tools, new technology in order to solve these problems, this is what I'm referring to. There are not the tools presently in the world of AI that accurately were able to match. So we made one. And it is an amazing discovery for us. It's something that we truly believe is going to transform the role of grant writers in terms of how much vacation and free time you're going to be able to actually have. Hopefully no more Little League games missed. And we actually think it may transform the world of AI as a whole as well.
I'm really excited. I cannot wait to see our launch, our new pieces that are coming into place, all the help that this is going to be offering, and I'm blown away. It's almost like I'm back in 1970, and I'm looking at the Flintstones, thinking that they made up that technology. It's there. We've arrived.
Yeah, it's or do you mean the Jetsons?
The Jetsons,
Yeah.
yeah, the Flintstones. Oh yeah, Fred with his feet on the wheel.
Oh.
Definitely the Jane and George Jetson.
No worries. It certainly sometimes feels like we've got the feet under the car in order to
Yeah.
get us there. But yeah, and I actually almost wore my bell bottoms today, but maybe it was a smart move that we didn't. Well, Dr. Bev, excuse me.
Just Bev.
Oh, thank you. This has truly been a pleasure, and I really enjoyed lunch with you earlier.
Thank you.
And I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to do it again. You are truly such an incredible human being, such an amazing influence on the grant funding world, an industry that is all about helping all of the other industries. And there is, in the conversations that I've had with you, I've been able to get such an amazing sense of the person that you are, as well as the professional that you are.
Do you know that I'm humble?
Well, I'll be braggadocious for you.
Oh, okay.
And so I have one question to try and kind of boil it all down. If you had a letter, a single letter, that just one side, normal card, that you could write to the world, what would it say?
Be brave. Be exploratory. Train yourself to understand the power of discernment. Stop planning ahead. Live each day, second by second, doing the things that you want to do, not the things you have to do. You are a part of a world, and the world has many ups, downs, goods, and bads. But you need to be the person that's kind, that's humble, that's honest, that's caring, and that worries about people who aren't like you. Because we can't convince the world to change, but we can be the change in this world.
That's amazing. And if I had a Post-it note to put on it, I'd say, check out Grantex's launch on July 15th.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
Oh, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Very good job.
Thank you.
All right, so what we're going to do is we were going to have you do a testimonial, but I feel like we can kind of take that from what you've already said.
Okay.
So honestly, if there's anything else you'd like to do, I'd mentioned doing like a kind of personal piece, but I feel like we kind of touched into that already too, and you got to share some of your stories in a way that I was hoping you would.
Definitely about the broken stove.
Yeah, that was really good. I like
A broken
that.
oven.
And
Yeah.
honestly, it was kind of helpful for me because I've had a lot of ramen lately. But yeah, so I guess if there's anything else that you would like to say, any other kind of last questions you'd like to get in, we can do that.
I would like to say, and it's a disclaimer for all of the folks out there in the grants industry, you know me, and you know the kind of person I am, and you know that I don't like accolades, I don't like my bio read, I don't like to be told all the things that I've done all my life, because it's embarrassing. I just kept my head down, I worked hard, I did what I had to do to support a family, to keep a family together, to keep a roof over our heads. I mean, who else spends 12 years in a 2-year community college? Because they can only go 1 or 2 classes a semester. So I just want to tell people who think they're having a hard time, especially in the grants industry and the scene that's unfolding in Washington, D.C., and that's all I'm going to say about that one. But I just want to say, don't be discouraged. Be encouraged, because new things are on the horizon every single second that we breathe, that we live. And Grantex is a fresh bright light for our industry. And you know that I would not say that, I would not endorse that, I would not have joined the advisory board if I didn't believe in it. I'm all about the truth and ethics and not doing anything that would cause me to spend whatever's left after this life in a hot place.
Well, thank you. Oh my gosh.